Well, good evening and welcome to About the Valley. And we have two guests this week because Joe has been here. Joe is becoming a regular.
I know, seriously. I gotta get tough billing
But
here.
along with Joe is Gerry Doughtery, and together they actually do a show on Thursdays on WCRN.
Well, it's Gerry's show.
It's Gerry's
I just
show.
am a guest as political commentator.
Yeah, and that's the political night,
It's-
political day, I should say.
Yeah, political Thursdays. So
Yeah.
Thursdays at 11 o'clock in the morning.
But Gerry is on every day
every day.
talking about retirement.
Right.
And how to make your money last. And that's a problem right now for some people because they're living longer than they thought they would.
They would. It's so every survey, Harry, that's done, it shows that the number one fear that retirees have is running out of money too soon,
Yeah,
which is really a longevity issue. You know, have I saved enough money? Am I going to run out of money too soon? Those are all really longevity questions. So the name of the program that we have on WCRN that's on every day, Monday through Friday, from 11 to noon, is called Making Money Last. You know, how do you make your money last?
yes.
And then also, how do you make money last in your life? How do you not worry about money? So that's why we have Making Money Last is the name of the program. And it's been on for, I'm now in my 8th year on WCRN.
Wow.
That
Yeah.
flew by, huh?
So it's been a while. Yeah, it did really fly by.
8 years already.
8 years. We just entered our 8th year. So,
But now, do you find a lot of retirees, it's a different world than it was, say, 20, 30 years ago.
oh yeah.
A lot of retirees go into retirement with current mortgages.
Well, they do. With 30 years ago, really, a lot of retirees went into retirement with pension plans. That was
Yes.
really the big thing. So there was a seamless transition from full employment to full retirement because you would figuratively leave your job one day
Yeah,
on a Friday afternoon, and then the next Monday, a pension check would begin coming in. But things are very different today because now people retire, and the vast majority of people in the private sector do not have pensions. So what they have is they'll have a Social Security benefit, and
Yeah.
they'll have a pile of assets in a 401k plan or perhaps in IRAs, and they're a little bit unclear on how to generate income from those piles of assets that will go on top of their Social Security to achieve their income goal.
yeah.
So
it-
the
it-
issues are very different today
It's
than
like
they
a
were 30 years
personal
ago.
pension plan.
Yes, like a personal pension
Yeah,
plan.
because a pension plan is able to keep paying you by investing their money that's on hand.
Yes,
So they keep the fund built up.
right.
Now, so you have to do that now as an individual,
Yes,
and that's where you come in, right?
right. So we'll figure out what somebody's income goal is. You know, how much income do they want to have in retirement? And of course, when people first come into my office, Harry, it's kind of funny. Almost, 100% of them, I'll say, what would you like as your income goal in retirement? And they'll say, Gerry, I have absolutely no idea
You're
how
right.
much income. So we want you to think about it kind of simplistically, but it really does work. What are your living expenses? What does it cost to keep the doors open at your house? But then what are your lifestyle expenses? What did you envision for your retirement?
Yeah,
Somebody
you
will
want to
say,
travel.
yeah, did you want to travel? Did you want to go to Florida for the month of January and February?
Yeah.
A lot of people will be stuck at a red light on their way home from work on a Friday night, and the snow will be coming down, and we'll say, when I retire, I am going to go to Florida for the month of January. So that's part of your vision for retirement. It's very personal. It belongs to you. It's your vision for retirement. But those are your lifestyle expenses. We want to add all those up, and we'll find that most people want to spend more on lifestyle expenses than they need on the living expenses, significantly more. It doesn't really cost that much as you get into retirement to keep the doors open at your house. You probably have paid down mortgages, you've already put kids through college, all of that. It's probably just really property taxes, insurance, maintenance on the house, things like that. So we'll find the lifestyle expenses are sometimes twice as much as the living expenses. And then what we'll do is we'll take a look and see what are your sources of income. Social Security, perhaps, smaller, older pensions. What do they add up to? And how much of a dent does that make in your goal for retirement? And then whatever the deficit is, whatever that gap is, we'll use your other assets, 401ks and IRAs, to fill that gap. So that in essence is what we do.
But then you also have retirees today that want to keep working,
They do, a lot of them.
maybe not at their career job, but something they always wanted to do.
Right. Your bucket list,
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah.
And it might be, and you
Yeah.
could consider that some income coming in.
Right.
You also have retirees that wanna get rid of the old homestead. The kids are grown up, they're gone. You don't wanna shovel snow every winter.
Mhm.
You don't wanna have to cut the grass all summer.
Right.
Downsize.
So, well, let's get into a condo.
Yeah.
Or maybe even rent.
Right.
So all that would come into, which would help them plan for, right?
It does. You know, when you talk about what is it that you really wanted to do, you know, what was your great ambition in life that you'd now like to do in retirement? You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people hear the word retire and they define it as an ending, right? I'm going to
Well, it
re-
was for many years.
It was, but I'm going to retire for the evening. I'm going to retire debt.
Yep.
It always is associated with an ending. But for many people, retirement is really a new beginning. It really can be a rebirth. It's kind of a way of rewriting their own life story, whatever their great ambition was. Because, you know, for you to reach your self-actualization, you know, it's just Maslow's pyramid. Remember from high school or college, Maslow's
Yeah.
pyramid?
Yeah, that's
Right.
reach back.
When you're at the base of the pyramid, you know, you have food and clothing and shelter and
Yep.
all of those things. And then as you go up, you know, fear and all of that. But once you have food, shelter, and clothing all taken care of, once you know you have your retirement paycheck coming in and you have the income need taken care of, and you don't really have a lot of financial responsibilities, it really is a great time to reach your self-actualization. And people who really understand retirement take advantage of that, and they do that. You know, that's what they should be doing. It should be a period to go out there and do what it is that you wanted to do. Knock some items off your bucket list.
Yep.
Take a few trips to Europe. You know, maybe start a band. I have people, it runs the gamut. I have one guy, he's 74 years old. He just wrote his first book. It's 101 ways to run your next and your best triathlon. Because he's 74 and now he's run 101 triathlons. His book came out last year. So
Wow.
it's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's pretty neat stuff. I have people who are 66-year-old rock stars. You know, they
Yeah.
played guitar, played drums, played in bands, but they had a job to go to, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Now
Right.
that they're retired, they get together and some of them play semi-professionally, you know, at local bars and things like that. So it's everything. Some people want to write a book. Some people just want to travel, and some people may want to sit at home and watch reruns. You know, I think most people are a little bit more ambitious than
Yeah.
that.
Do you still actually get people coming in with full pensions still, or is that really?
We do. So
gone
there's some
away?
companies. So pensions have really, for the most part, at this point, gone the way of dinosaurs and telephone operators. They really have. They're almost extinct.
Unless you're a municipal employee.
Unless you're a municipal employee, but in the private sector, I
Yeah.
think Jerry was
Right.
talking about.
Yeah.
So you have companies like, I still will, but they're at the tail end. So, you know, you have people who had worked at Raytheon and they started in the late 1980s. Now
Yeah.
they're retiring. You know, they've had a 35-year career at Raytheon. They're coming in, they might be, 60, 65 years old. They are still in the old pension plan that was a pretty generous plan. And a
Right.
few other companies as well. You know, so there are still some of them out there, but it's fewer and fewer companies that do indeed have pension plans. Public sector employees, though, it's a
That's
totally
sweet,
different
yeah.
story. You know.
Yes.
It is a pension plan that most of them have, but for the
For life.
private sector, they really have kind of gone to the wayside, fewer and fewer.
You know, when the federal government introduced the 401 concept, companies jumped on that.
They did. So coming out of ERISA, you know, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, 1974, in the early 1980s, people looked at ERISA and they said, you know, we could put this thing into place called a 401k plan. And they're called defined contribution plans. Because under a defined contribution plan, you are defining your contribution into the plan. But you never know what's going to happen on the back end.
Right.
So, you know, you put in an amount of money, your employer matches it, and then it grows. But you never know what it's going to grow to. If you make wise investment decisions, it could potentially grow to a king's ransom. If you make poor investment decisions, you might be very disappointed on the day you retire.
Right.
But a lot of companies looked at their pension plans, which are called defined benefit plans, because you're defining the benefit at the back end. In a defined benefit plan, they'll say, you know, Harry, if you work for this company for 30 years and you reach the age of 55, we're going to pay you 80% of your highest 3 years of earnings. So they're defining the benefit at the back end. But a lot of companies, in order to provide for those benefits, in order to make good on that promise they were making to employees, pension plans are very expensive.
Yes,
So when 401k plans really came on the scene in earnest in the early 1980s, that's when a lot of CFOs and a lot of treasurers of companies, they said, hey, maybe we can push the burden of saving for retirement away from us in these expensive pension plans and push it on to the employees. And when you look at the spectrum of players, one could make the argument that the employee is perhaps the least qualified to be making these type of decisions. And that's why some employees, they've made missteps with their 401ks, where to put the money with their IRAs, and they're ready to retire now, and they're disappointed. And also, 2000 to 2001, big market crash,
yes.
didn't help out. 2008, 2009, and many in between smaller ones, and then the spring of this year, really devastated a lot of retirees' 401k.
That's where you need a money manager.
That's why you need professional management, but you also need a plan. As you get closer to retirement, there's a big difference between de-risking a portfolio as you get closer to retirement, which is what a lot of people will counsel you to do,
Right.
and actually having a retirement plan. That's a purpose-driven plan where you're generating the income that you need in retirement, your income goal. You're protecting the income, and then you're growing the remainder of your assets. Because once in retirement, you're going to have a ton of threats to your retirement, everything from longevity that we touched on before, to inflation, to tax rates in the future. We're in a low tax environment right now. We'll
Yes.
see after next Tuesday if we're going into a higher tax
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of threats to retirees today that are different than previous generations faced.
yeah, and
So
don't
that's why
forget
a
that
plan will mitigate those. or
one
at
of
least
the
address them.
candidates that was running
Yeah,
happened to be a senator who introduced the concept of taxing Social Security.
right.
He's the one who brought it up.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't be such
Yeah,
a
a
big
lot of
Vine
people don't
supporter.
realize that Social Security at one point was not taxed,
Right,
but now your Social Security benefit is taxed at the federal
Yes.
level. Massachusetts, it's state income tax free. But nobody pay, it depends upon what your other income is. So if you're married filing jointly and you have more than 44,000, this is a 2020 number, more than 44,000 of other income, married filing jointly, then 85% of your Social Security benefit is going to be taxable at the federal level, meaning that if you're receiving $1,000 of Social Security benefit, $850 of that benefit would be taxable at
Right.
whatever your tax rate is.
yes, and a lot of people don't realize that when they retire,
Yeah,
they don't get hit with that until they file their income tax,
correct.
unless you have it taken out.
Yeah, unless you're escrowing it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you can have, Social Security will do that for
They
you.
will, yes.
But most people don't think of that. They think, oh, look, and I just turned 67, I'm gonna get my Social Security, I'm gonna have my 401, this is gonna help me out. But when you start drawing that 401 down, that becomes income, the Social Security, and all of a sudden you're getting hit with a big tax bill.
You do. So with Social Security, again, if you have married filing jointly, which I assume, most people probably listening to us are.
Right.
If you're married filing jointly, if you have $44,000 of income in addition to your Social Security income, the Social Security Administration calls that provisional income, then 85% of your Social Security benefit will be taxable.
What if you're filing single?
Single, I think the number, Joe, is 34,000, I believe.
So you don't get taxed till you reach 34 additional or
No,
34 together?
it begins at lower levels, but nobody pays tax on more than 85% of their Social Security benefit. So depending upon what your other income is, that provisional income, if it's a lower income, then you may be paying tax on 50% of your Social Security benefit. It could be 60%. And then conceivably, if you had a very low Social Security benefit and you didn't have any other income, then you might not pay tax on any of it.
Right.
But that's a problem. You're far better off. It's a success problem having a lot of other income.
As so many things are, right? They penalize you for being a success.
Well, it's the
right?
wherewithal to pay, if you have the money. And that's what, in the United States, it's what a lot of our rules are based upon, is that if you have more income, you can afford to pay more in taxes. And remember that other income that you have, your income in retirement, it not only affects your federal tax rates, but it also affects how much you pay for Medicare, for the premiums on Medicare Part B,
Yes.
Medicare Part D premiums, and so on. the
Yeah,
more
what
money you
people don't
make.
realize, that's deducted out of your social security.
It is. It's taken
Yeah.
out of your social security. Yeah, so you're gonna get a net, just like a paycheck, you're gonna get a net social security check, and then you're going to have other sources of income that come in, and all of them combined are going to make what I call in my book that I wrote, what I call in my book, your retirement paycheck. You're essentially making a retirement paycheck for yourself. But it's no different than when you were working in many respects. It's totally analogous in that when you were working, you had a paycheck, you had deductions coming from it, and that determined the budget, how much you could spend. And in retirement, we want to figure out what your retirement paycheck is going to be, so you know how much you can
But
spend.
you get a lot of people today,
Yeah.
younger people, they think that paycheck is what they get, that,
Oh, don't you love it when your nieces, nephews, kids, the first paycheck they get, and they want to know, who is this FICA person? Why did they
Yeah.
take so much money?
they don't realize
Yeah.
that, yeah, even when they get that paycheck,
Yeah.
they don't realize it. You know, say they get a paycheck for $500, but they really made $650, and what happened?
Right.
Yeah.
Where's the rest of it?
I always said if you were to start early and everybody got their full paycheck,
Right.
and every time you got your paycheck, they would give you that $600, and then as they gave you the check, said, now you need to write me back a check for this and this, the deductions. How much more accountability would we have to our elected officials for
yeah.
taxes if we, because we always get that, right, when you start to work, you do that, what's my take home? And you adjust your lifestyle to your take home pay. But if
Well,
you
that
were
used to
told
be,
it's this.
in a way, you know, I think it was roughly, 1980 that remember Pat Buchanan, who ran for
Yes.
president? Probably around 1980 or so, something like that. It might be off. Maybe it was 84, whatever. But Pat Buchanan, you know, he had a really good, you know, position when it came to taxes. You know, he was saying that somehow, post-World War II, we started paying more taxes at the federal level than at the
Yeah.
local level, where you have more control. You know, so we pay our taxes in Washington, D.C. The majority of our taxes, our tax burden is paid to Washington, D.C. at the federal level. But it's very difficult for us to hop in our cars and go down to the Capitol and punch somebody in the nose
Right.
when we want to complain about our taxes. It's very easy to drive into your town hall and say, I'm paying too much in taxes, and to actually speak to the people who are putting these tax rates together, whether it's ad valorem property taxes or whether it's another type of tax.
Well,
But you can
you-
also show up at town
But
hall.
it wasn't always that way. We used to
No.
pay more at the local level
Yeah.
than at the federal level.
Well, it was
And a lot
what-
of people would kind of like to get back to that,
Roosevelt
where we have
used
more
World War
control.
II
Yeah.
to bring about withholding.
Yes,
Prior to that, come April 15th, you wrote a check for what
Yeah.
you owed for income tax. It wasn't taken out all year.
yeah, doing a piece where withholding is just, it makes, it, you know, increases compliance, obviously.
Right,
Yeah,
but
it's
when
much
he brought it
easier
on,
for
he
people
said
to
it
do
was-
it a little bit at a
He
time.
introduced it because of World War II and said,
Sure.
we get the money up front. And, you know, if you pay too much, we'll give it back to you.
Right,
Now people use it somewhat as a savings
Yeah.
account, for crying out loud.
right.
Yeah. When they get back 2,000 or 3,000, they think that's found money. And it's,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interest-free loan that they've made, essentially.
yeah,
to the
yeah, you
government,
made an
yeah.
interest-free loan to the government.
Yeah.
Right,
But, you're right, though, you take it in a town where you have town meeting,
right.
you actually have some control over the budget.
You can show up at that
You
meeting.
can show up and you get enough
Yeah.
people to vote no, they're gonna have to lower the budget.
They are, but we don't have that control at the federal level.
No,
At the
we have
local
no-
level, we have a lot of control because we can stop by our town hall or our city hall
Yep.
whenever we want. But at
And-
the federal level, we don't have that, and it's a problem when you're paying most of your taxes at the federal level.
Yeah,
You just don't have access.
I always said, we're better off, instead of getting money back from the feds in
Send
form of
less,
grants
yeah.
and things like that, lower the income tax and let us pay more property tax.
Yeah,
You know, New Hampshire does that. New Hampshire has very high property tax, but they don't have a state income tax,
yeah.
they don't have a sales tax.
Yeah, the only thing about the income tax that is appealing to me, Harry, and I'm not, you know, I don't relish in the fact that I have to pay income taxes every year. So it's not something that I love doing. But the thing that is appealing to me is that it speaks to what, you know, we were talking about a little while ago, your wherewithal to pay.
Yes.
The issue with the property tax is that you do have people, sometimes,
Yeah.
they bought a house 30 or 40 years ago. They never made a lot of money, but they happened to buy a piece of real estate in a great location.
Yeah, that
And the
is a
thing has
problem.
quadrupled
Yeah.
or, quintupled, and whatever it happens to be, it's gone way up in price. And now all of a sudden the tax rates reflect that, but they don't have the wherewithal to pay it.
Right.
The property tax is kind of a blind tax. The income tax, if somebody is making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year, you know that they have the ability to bear the tax burden because they have cash flow of, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 a month coming in.
Right.
So they can handle it. But it tells you something about their wherewithal to pay the tax. The property tax is a blind tax. It doesn't really tell you about the person's wherewithal. They could have just lucked out, or maybe even wise enough, I don't know, to buy that piece of property in the right location. That's why I've always called it a blind tax, the property tax.
And also, their income may not go up as fast as the property tax goes up.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah.
And here again, but there again, we come back to the situation, what does property tax use for? Well, primarily, 50% of the property tax goes to funding the schools.
Yeah, right.
If you look at the average budget in any community,
It does.
it's about 50% goes to schools.
Yeah.
Well, here again, if you have no children in the school system, you're still paying for it. And I think we need to do that, because we have to educate our society.
Sure.
But if that was funded by the state, it'd be a lot easier on the people that pay property tax. And then they fund the local police, the fire, and highway department, and rest of municipal government, because they're using that hands-on,
Right.
everybody. But the state pick up more of the school, and I think that did happen in New Hampshire, where the state now, they never used to fund it all.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
don't know that well. Yeah.
Yeah, when it came down to where some towns were having better systems than other towns because they had more revenue.
Yeah.
And there was a lawsuit, and that's where the state had to come in and start giving funds to these schools, these systems that didn't have the money.
Yeah.
In Massachusetts, we do get a lot of aid. But there again, you don't have control, we don't have any control we have control over our part of the budget, but not the rest.
Right.
And that comes back to a lot of the census again. The census will dictate a lot of the federal money and how it gets divvied up.
Right.
So that's such an
Census
important
will.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the federal money, there's no control at all. And here, at least at the state level, for the most part, you're gonna see a state rep, because they have 3 or 4 towns, and they're around, and you can get a hold of them. Try and get a hold of a congressman.
Right. It's impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
You call you'll get one of his workers.
Right.
You're not gonna get to talk to that person.
Yeah, and that was Pat Buchanan's point, is that you have the least amount of control at the federal level,
Right.
yet we pay most of our money to the federal government. So that's a problem. So how you resolve all these issues, I'm not quite sure, Harry.
I know.
But I can tell you,
Yeah.
That was
I can tell you, it's something to think about. It is a point well taken,
That
from
was-
all those years ago,
that
40 years
that
ago.
was well taken
Yeah.
back when the country first started out.
Yeah, right,
The state said,
Yeah.
we don't wanna send all this money up to the federal level.
yeah.
There was a big argument over that, over federalism and,
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
tried a bunch of different tax, ways of raising revenue when the country started out. A lot of people would be surprised that, we've had a income tax only since 1913.
Yeah.
yes,
That was it, the 16th Amendment brought in the federal income tax. And people would say, well, why would anybody be so stupid as to vote in an income tax? And it's because, at that time, prior to that, taxes were just being paid kind of by the common man for the most part. They had taxes on things like beer,
Right.
cigarettes, things like that the common man was using.
yeah,
For
where they
these
had
things.
import taxes.
And they had import taxes and stuff like that. But you had people who were making a lot of money. These, tycoons coming out of the Industrial Revolution, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Mellons,
Yes.
who were making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month.
Which was,
When
lot of
the
money
average
in those
American
days.
might have been making $500 to $1,000 a year.
Right.
So when the income tax came about, it was ratified overwhelmingly by the majority of states. They really wanted an income tax
But it was only
because they
like-
thought these bigwigs were getting away with murder.
It was only like
So-
I think 2 or 3% tax.
I don't know what the rate was.
It was very low,
Yeah,
and it was only on after 100,000, I think, before it kicked in.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was way up there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
probably-
we've seen what that happens with
Yeah.
taxes, yeah. Like,
it
you know,
probably was, but
Biden's
it's
talking
been
about.
high at periods of time, but, riddled with loopholes and
Right.
all
Oh,
sorts
yeah.
of deductions, so nobody ever really pays
Well,
those
they
high
kept
rates.
changing it, manipulating it around. I mean, you look, prior to Ronald Reagan changing the tax code, it was, you had so many deductions, you could deduct all your interest on your credit cards.
Right,
I mean, it was unbelievable, but,
right, all interest deductions.
but you,
yeah.
but you needed an accountant to put your tax together because it was
You
so
did,
much
yeah.
involved.
Right.
Well, does anyone really believe if Joe Biden's elected that nobody under 400,000 will have a tax increase?
No, there's no
Do
way.
you actually believe that? I
Well,
mean,
he says he's going to roll back the Trump tax
Which
cuts,
is
Yeah,
an
so that's
instant
a-
increase.
which is an
definitely an
instant
increase right
increase to
there.
the average family.
So,
That is
so
absolutely an instant
again,
increase.
he's contradicting himself in those statements right away. I'm not going to raise it over 400,000. I'm going to roll back the Trump tax cuts. You can't have it both ways. Instantly, it's a tax, raising your taxes.
To the
It's
average
crazy.
person, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's not. It's really the way that things work. Because most people would say, well, we need more revenue, so therefore we have to lower taxes. But that's not the way it actually works. If you lower taxes, it inspires more growth, it inspires more business
Right.
development, more businesses start up, you have more employees, so you have more businesses and people paying taxes. And prior to the pandemic, that's actually what we were seeing. From the tax cuts of 2017, revenues have gone up
Yes.
at the federal and the state level.
Yeah.
The coffers were full, prior to this pandemic, because we had many more businesses and many more taxpayers paying into the system at these lower rates. So most people wouldn't think through that clearly. They would just think that we have to raise taxes if we want more revenue. But that's not the way it works. It's actually a disincentive. It inhibits
Well-
business growth and the creation of jobs.
Well, probably the biggest revenue source on
Yeah.
the income tax, on business tax, is small business.
Yeah.
Sure,
In the
absolutely.
creation, sure.
And when you lower the tax rate, they have more funds available. Now they go out and hire another person.
They do.
That's it.
So now you got that person paying taxes.
Yes.
And so actually you end up with more money coming in.
And how many other problems do jobs solve? It was Ronald Reagan who said the best welfare program is a job.
Yes.
It's the truth. And now it just gives you the dignity. How many people's lives have been changed by an opportunity? By an
Oh.
employment opportunity. You look at it, everybody's life, your own life. I'm sure people listening to us right now, everybody's life has been changed by an employment opportunity. The chance to provide, to put food on a table for a family, to drive a better car or safer car, to live in a safer, better neighborhood. It's all about the economy. A
We
vibrant
saw that.
economy solves a lot of problems.
We saw that under welfare reform. Remember welfare reform in the 90s?
Yeah,
Bill Clinton
right,
actually
he did.
helped to get it through. It happened in Massachusetts. And you had people who were on welfare for years, maybe even generations, said they weren't happy with the fact they had to get a job. But then after they got a job, I feel better about myself now.
Yes. Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like myself, I don't want to stop working. I love working.
Yeah.
And I could have survived without working, but I don't want to.
These independently wealthy people, it's hard to relate to them sometimes.
Harry, there are all sorts of studies out there in retirement planning that talk about losing relevance. And it's believe it or not, it's kind of a gender-based thing that men very often, when they lose relevance, they have greater percentages of mortality and so on. And one of the ways that there are many ways to get relevance. It just doesn't have to be from work. It can be, from doing philanthropic things at a church,
Yes.
helping out with grandchildren. It can be a lot of different ways. But men in general do find relevance in employment. So like in my practice, I will meet with a lot of people and they'll say, I'm turning 70, but I think I'm still going to continue to work part-time, maybe for 25 or 20 or 25 hours a week,
Yeah.
just to interact with some younger people. But really what they're saying is that I still want to be relevant And that's how they get their
Yes.
relevance. They want to have a mission to get out of bed in the morning, to go someplace, to interact with other people. It just makes them feel good. Sitting around, people who I see sit around, who just sit around after retirement, who don't work at all or don't really do anything at all, who are literally just sitting around, it's the most unhealthy thing, and every study will show you this. They develop all sorts of cognitive and physical problems, and it's really the beginning of the end when you do
Yeah.
nothing. You know, it's the old it's the old adage, idle hands are the devil's workshop. It's really true. You will kill yourself if you're not doing anything. Staying busy, being productive really does give you not only a sense of purpose, but it also gives you relevance in retirement.
Yeah, even go and get a volunteer job.
Yeah, go do something great. Go volunteer and help some kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, help
And
some young people.
Those studies, do they also show that the gender base of it, that men find more identity in their employment or their jobs than women
They do.
Yeah.
They definitely do.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Men-
think
men
that's
tie their
changing.
identity to
it
their
is
work.
gender based. It is
Yeah.
funny.
Well, I think it's changing. I think it's getting the same for women now, because more women now are getting to professionals.
Sure.
And even after they have children, want to get back to work.
Well, I thought women exceeded men in the workforce recently.
I don't know. They may
Yeah,
have.
I thought I
that
saw
there
an
are
article
more
on
men
that
than
or
there are
something.
Well,
women.
you've had a situation where, with the COVID thing, where men are staying home and taking care of the kids who aren't in school anymore either,
Yes.
and the wife is out working because she might have had a better job. She might have made more money.
Yeah, well, I think there are a lot of couples that have made those decisions.
Yeah.
And the husband, if that's not politically correct.
Yeah.
But the husband being the caretaker at home
Well,
has
if
become
the,
more and
if the
more
wife had a
common.
better income,
Yeah.
it makes more sense.
Yeah, I have friends
does
like
make more
that. You know, the wife is an attorney or a high-paying job,
Yeah.
and you know, he does either a small business or side type of work, but he's there to pick up the kids and take them out. I've seen that
It's
many
not
times.
uncommon.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not uncommon.
And a lot of women today want to stay working at their profession.
Yeah,
They went to school for it, they got into a good job, they want to stay at it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
They
So
do.
there's nothing wrong. And the same with, well, my wife worked, she's still working, she's gonna retire on December 23rd.
Really?
She only works 3 days a week now.
Yeah.
They asked, well, can you stay for, work one day? He says, no. I gotta get out. But she wanted to keep going just for the sake of, you hang around the house.
Mm-hmm.
Probably asked her to work overtime on her last day there.
Yeah,
Could you stay
exactly.
for a few extra hours?
Yeah.
We know this is the last day we're going to see you.
We need you Christmas Eve day tomorrow. Can you come in?
She picked that day so she don't have to work Christmas Eve and
Yeah.
Christmas, because
Right.
she's in nursing and works at a, what do you call, assisted living.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, you know, they're 24 hours, 7 days a week.
they are.
Yeah, you can't shelve them.
No.
So,
And, you know, she works 3 days, but the 3 days are 2 days during the week, and then
Yeah.
Saturday 1 week and a Sunday the next.
Sure.
So it comes out to 3 days a week, because you gotta get somebody in for the weekends. Those are the hard times to fill.
yeah.
Right.
So what's going to happen Tuesday, Harry?
Yeah, we gotta get into politics.
A little bit.
I can tell you, in Northbridge,
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw on Sunday Telegram, they listed the Central Mass contributions
Yeah.
to Trump and Biden.
Yeah.
Northbridge was 2-1 for Trump,
Wow.
but,
Yeah. All of Central Mass was heavy Trump.
yeah.
Matched or exceeded Biden.
When they broke down the final totals, they almost identical.
Yeah.
But that's because you had certain towns, like Shrewsbury, that gave a large amount.
Yeah.
To
And Worcester
Biden.
proper.
Yeah.
Marlboro, some of the more wealthy communities. That's why, you know, this thing about the Republicans are the party of the rich and the
Yeah.
Democrats are the party of the poor. How come the rich give more to the Democrats?
Right.
Wall
We drive
Street.
through these beautiful neighborhoods, and all I see are Trump. All I see are Biden Harris
Yeah.
signs and Black Lives Matter signs.
Yeah.
In a lot of these neighborhoods.
Yeah. I think the parties have reversed.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you also
I
have the factor that a lot of Trump supporters won't put the sign up because of vandalism or the retribution.
Yeah.
Just like they won't put it on their cars and they won't put it in their houses.
Well,
We've seen
4
this.
years ago, people who had bumper stickers on their cars got their car keyed.
Yep.
Right.
I know a number of people it happened to.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think that silent majority might even be bigger in 2020 than 2016, because it's
I agree
gotten
with you,
even
Joe.
more hostile to be an
Well,
open
you know,
Trump supporter.
I'm an example. I got a call one night, and the person, they said, are you a registered voter? And I says, yes, I am, but I'm also an illegal alien. So they hung up on me.
Yeah.
But I didn't give them an answer.
Well, I got to
Right.
tell you, the polls are interesting because, they've closed the gap. And I think that this gap we've seen close in the last few days, and we're going to see close, is partly that they don't want to be horribly as wrong as they were in 2016.
Yeah.
And if they're as bad and as off as they were in 2016, they seriously need
They're
to
out
get
of
into a
business.
new business.
Yeah.
But there are
Who's gonna use
certain
them?
polls that are out there that are actually, and that's the funny thing, is the media, mainstream media, decides to use the polls that they like what they say.
Right.
Of course.
Ignoring those polls that are actually more on target, and they show either more dead heat or even Trump ahead in some cases. And in Florida right now, this early voting, and we were talking about this at dinner, the early voting has actually, Biden had at one, they thought at 800,000 lead, it shrunk to 120,000 in Democrat Republican votes, and now we're going into the general election on Tuesday with Trump half the votes for, well, assumed for Trump, and only a third of what Biden expected. So if there's a huge Trump turnout, physical turnout at the polls Tuesday, which we know that Trump supporters will crawl through glass
It
to
definitely
vote.
favors Trump.
I
The
think
two-
that Florida
the
will
voting
go.
in person on Tuesday will favor Trump. What I think is interesting is that the mail-in voting so far in a lot of these key states like Florida, there has been more early voting
Yes.
from the Republicans than from the Democrats,
Right.
which the pollsters said that should not be happening.
Which
Well, this
again,
is-
they totally
this
called
is
wrong.
because
Yeah.
Right.
You base it on historical evidence. When early voting started, and it's been around for a number of terms, presidential races now, it's getting more and more popular. But it was Democrats that were doing the early voting. So they assumed that that's what would happen
Yeah.
again.
They did.
But it seems that Republicans now are jumping on the idea. And I talked to a lot of people, I mean, that love it now. I mean, my wife and I voted last week.
So I voted yesterday, Harry, in my town.
Yep.
And I went to the town hall. I voted at about maybe 5:30 in the afternoon, 6 o'clock, something like that. The parking lot had cars in it, but I found a parking space in about 2 seconds. There were plenty of spaces available.
Yep.
I waltzed right into the place. It was very well organized. One person was ahead of me in line. They asked me my name, gave it to them, and then they just confirmed the street address. And then they gave me the envelope that the ballot goes into.
Yes.
And they made sure I signed the envelope,
Yes.
because I guess that's one of the ways that things are being
The
kicked out.
signature has to match your signature on record with the registry.
Okay, well, it does. It was me. I was voting for
Yeah.
myself.
Well,
Then
that's
they
what they're
gave me the
matching it to.
ballot. And then, I went over and I voted, as we always do, in a regular booth. I filled it out, put it into the envelope. Then they had me scotch tape
Yes,
the envelope.
because it can't be
seal.
opened until election day.
Correct. And then I put it into the box. But I couldn't believe it. It was the first time I voted early. And it was a terrific experience.
Yeah.
I was telling Joe this morning on our Political Thursday show on Making Money Last, I said, I was a big fan growing up. I grew up in Worcester. And I was a big fan of Gerry Williams, the famous radio
Oh,
talk show
yes,
host.
yeah, I was a fan of Gerry Williams.
Yeah, me too. I guess everybody was. He
Yeah.
was so popular.
Yep,
But I had the bug from a very young age. But I remember Gerry Williams, who was ahead of his time on so many different things.
yes.
And he would always say that for these national polls, we really should have voting over an entire weekend. Start on a Friday morning and end it on a Sunday night,
Right,
where you don't have the pressure to get home from work on Tuesday afternoon.
right.
Which some people may not be able to, so some people might not have been able to vote. But it just makes sense. This was the experience I went through yesterday was so almost leisurely. It was
Yes.
just very, very easy to vote.
Yeah.
Very easy. And there were a few people in there. There was a cop. They had a cop at town hall and all of that. And it worked really well.
No,
Yeah.
I gotta say, I'll give it to the Secretary of State. Massachusetts did everything in a very good way. You could do the absentee they mailed a card to everyone. They didn't mail a ballot.
Yeah.
They mailed a card where you could request a ballot be mailed to you. That's the way to do it,
Yeah,
because
that does
That's-
make more
you're
sense.
not just dropping
Yeah.
ballots at every
Right.
address.
And that's
Yes.
that's pretty much the same system as absentee voting.
Yeah.
Is you request the
Right.
ballot.
It just-
And
you didn't
but
have
this
to give a
mass
reason.
mailing, blindly mailing hundreds and millions of ballots out,
Yeah, to every address.
makes absolutely no sense, especially when we know that the voter rolls are not purged, and purged, contrary to what you're led to believe, is a good thing, because purging the voter rolls is not suppression, but that means you're removing dead people, people who have
Yeah.
moved,
Yeah.
people who are not eligible to
I have a
vote.
personal story in that realm. You know, one of my daughters, she moved to California
Yeah,
about 5 years ago to the San Diego area after she graduated from college. She's now in her late 20s. She has had a California driver's license, and with the California driver's license, you register to vote at that point when you get a new license. So it's been at least 5 years, and I got one of the Secretary of State's mailers addressed to her
yeah. There
at
you
our
go.
house. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. So Joe, to your point,
Yeah.
these voter lists are not
Well,
accurate,
that's
accurate.
because the states are supposed to communicate with one another on that,
and I'm
but it
sure.
doesn't always happen.
No.
Look at the registry
Yeah,
of motor
look at
vehicles.
what
here.
happened
Yeah,
with
yeah,
that-
with
with
that,
that,
with
yeah.
that situation.
With these suspended driver's
Yeah.
licenses.
Yeah, they
they're
just
not,
throw them in a
communicating
box.
on anything
Yeah,
important.
exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
And-
these are bureaucrats, remember?
And the thing is, going into this, we've seen the Trump organization has had a ground organization, a door knocking organization. They've
Huge.
knocked on 2.5 million doors, and
Oh,
let's
I
not
know.
forget that they've registered 800,000 people in that time. So now you have 800,000 new registered voters voting, being registered by Trump supporters
Yep.
as Republicans.
It's amazing.
And that might be why this, early voting and mail-in voting is heavier on
Well,
the
if you-
Republican than they thought.
If you look at
Very well
what,
be.
Yeah.
what the Trump people did, is they mirrored what the Democrats always did.
Yeah.
So-
And
and
I've
it's
said that
paying
for
off.
years. Is
This enthusiasm is so important. The Trump voters have such enthusiasm. Now, I don't know if enthusiasm alone is enough to actually win an election, but I can tell
It's
you
a big
this.
part of it.
It is a big part of it, but I can tell you this, that if you don't have enthusiasm in your
Mm-hmm.
base, you're pretty much guaranteed to lose.
Yes.
You know, if we have a day like today on Tuesday, a miserable, rainy day,
Yeah,
if we have a day just like today, next Tuesday, the Trump voters are still going to the polls.
they're still going?
Yes.
There are
And
a
it-
lot of people who would just say, I'm going home.
Yeah.
Yep.
And especially if they've been led to believe by the polls that Biden's already won.
Right.
Those Biden voters are
well,
less
see, yeah, I
likely
don't
to
have to
go
go,
out.
he's already won, I
Yeah.
don't worry about it.
And who is enthusiastic about Joe Biden? Let's be honest
There,
about
there
this.
isn't. There's more enthusiasm against Trump than there is for Biden.
There's no question.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
there's no
just,
question.
It's a, I don't like Trump vote.
yeah.
Biden is not a transformational figure in American politics. He's been wrong on virtually everything in his 47-year career.
Yeah.
I'll
He's
I'll
got some
tell you,
really strange stuff going on in his personal life.
Right.
And he
And-
has for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm
And
gonna-
that's coming to light,
A
maybe a
lot-
little too late.
A lot of these people that are telling the polls they're voting for Biden, when they get there, and you haven't heard about them, on the ballot, there's the Green Party and
Right.
the Libertarian Party.
Right.
They may get there, and then they look at the ballot, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to vote for Biden, I can vote for this guy. Because I don't
there'll
want
be
to
an
vote
element
for
of-
Trump.
Yeah, there will be an element of that.
Yeah.
So
And then pull off.
that
Yeah.
could make a difference.
It could make a difference.
Yeah.
There's no question. They claim it's going to be razor thin.
It-
You know,
Yeah.
every vote counts.
And
Who
the
knows?
other part is the black and Latino vote is going to be a huge factor in this election because the needle has absolutely moved on the black vote block
Well, what is
to
it?
Trump.
What is it, I think it was, if he got 15% or more of the black vote,
Yeah.
the Democrat couldn't win?
Well, and they're talking, if you're talking to people like Herschel Walker or even 50 Cent or Kanye West, they're putting it into the 20s. That he's going to break 20%. Some are estimating higher than
Well,
that.
why wouldn't that happen? So, you know, why wouldn't that
Years of
happen?
conditioning.
When you look at it, when you look at what Donald Trump has done pre-pandemic, you know,
Yeah.
this pandemic, this black swan event that happened because these business closures that you know really ruined our economy. But prior to that, we had an economy where we had the lowest African-American unemployment
Yeah.
ever recorded, the lowest Hispanic unemployment.
Yes.
We had the lowest women's unemployment,
Yes.
lowest Asian unemployment, remarkably low unemployment numbers, not the lowest ever, but the lowest in 50 years. And we had wage growth for the first time. And when you look at those wage growth numbers, the wage growth was most pronounced, it was the biggest, among people
There you go.
who did not have a high school education.
Yes.
Talk about being forgotten Americans. And, Harry and Joe, I will tell you, when you come back to the polling, I think one of the things that pollsters can't drill down on, and they can't seem to reach out and put a finger on, is that person without the high school education who is working in a pretty low-end job, but who has experienced wage growth recently and maybe even had a promotion or two pre-pandemic. That's what they can't put their finger on, because those people are Trump supporters, especially males. And a lot of the, what you were saying, the Hispanics and so on, they're claiming that Trump is going to get, potentially in excess of 40% of the Hispanic vote. That's a huge number.
Yeah, and that's going to be devastating
But I
to
think
the
that they
Democrats.
understand. I don't know why they wouldn't,
Right.
because they have really benefited under this Trump economy.
When you talk unemployment right now in this economy,
Yeah,
who's the unemployed? It's people in service industries. The
It is.
manufacturing is going gangbusters.
yeah,
And a lot of people are working and getting, and their jobs they can't find people to work from. I interviewed, for the radio show this weekend, the guy from Medline,
yeah.
who opened a huge warehouse in Uxbridge. He says, I'm not at capacity of my workers. I need more workers and I can't find any. And you hear trucking companies saying, we can't
Yeah.
find drivers.
Yeah.
Right.
So
These are good jobs, They
Yeah.
are just good jobs for the average person that's out there. These are good jobs. There's nothing wrong. I respect anybody who has a job. If you have a job,
Yeah.
you have my complete RESPECT. You really do. But these are good jobs, and for some reason we got away from this, and so we're just going to let all of these jobs disappear. But there are a bunch of people who would love to have those jobs, Harry.
Well,
And
really,
that's how we will get back on our feet. Is
Joe
by
Biden called it a three-letter word.
yeah.
Remember that? Back when he was campaigning with
JOBS,
Obama.
yes, he did.
Yeah,
I give you a three-letter word, JOBS.
Yeah.
Jobs.
I know.
Well, we have a nice laundry list of Joe or Biden.
He is the
Yeah.
he's the
But
Muggs
the thing
McGinnis
is-
of American politics.
The thing is, that to say that people got a problem, the service industry, and if they want to make a change, there is
Yeah.
a job for them. Maybe you can't be a
Well-
waiter anymore.
Yeah, but all these miners and stuff, they're just going to become coders. That's what Joe said.
Yeah.
They could just,
Right.
if you could dig, if you
We're
can
gonna
be a
re-
miner
we're
and
gonna
dig
retrain them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all coders. We're going to have.
Manufacturing is what built America's middle class. All of those auto workers
Yeah.
in the Midwest, and
Steel workers.
and steel workers, and so on. The hard-working people are the ones who really built the middle class, and that's what America offers. Is
Yeah.
at least a middle class dream, and we have the jobs to do that. When you take those jobs away, that's what destroys it, and that's how we end up with a country with haves and have-nots.
Also,
Polarized.
It lowers your
But
national
those have been
security.
Democrat policies that got us there.
But national security is tied to manufacturing.
It is.
We couldn't have won World War II if we didn't have all the factories that were able to convert over to war manufacturing.
Right.
The Civil War, why did the North win? Because they had the manufacturing capabilities. The South had to import everything. So what did the Union do? They blockaded. The
Yeah.
South couldn't get any goods.
Harry, I would encourage everybody out there to look and see how many wars Donald Trump has started.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
None.
None.
The,
How many
the answer
soldiers
is
he ended
zero.
them?
And then when you look back, whether it's Barack Obama, whether it's George Bush 43,
Yep.
whether it's Clinton, whether it's 41, all of these people loved wars. And the way that Donald Trump has stayed out of wars is he has weaponized the economic might
Yes.
of the United States. And what he does is he economically, through tariffs and through sanctions, he strangles our foes.
Yes.
He shuts off their supply of money. And it's so smart because rather than us taking kids from Northbridge, Massachusetts, or from Worcester, Massachusetts, young boys, and sending them off to these disaster, you know what Donald Trump calls them,
Yeah.
blank holes
Yep.
of
Yep.
countries to have our kids killed, it's much better
Blood in the
that we
sand.
just use our economic might
Yes.
and stay out of this military adventurism that every other president has done.
And
I don't understand why people don't see this, why more people don't see this as clearly with Donald Trump. It has been terrific what he's done, but it's all predicated upon us having a vibrant economy.
Mm-hmm.
Look
We have
what
to
he-
have that big economic engine.
Look
to
what
do
he's done
that.
in Israel,
Yeah.
in
Well,
the Middle East.
okay.
They said it
Three-
couldn't be done.
Yeah, they
Right.
said it totally impossible.
Has
And
to
how
involve
did
the
he do it?
Palestinians. Has to.
By striking
Economics.
these deals
Right.
surrounding Iran. And he said,
Yep.
if he wins the election, the first phone call he's going to get is Iran because they're on their heels and they'll be dying to make a deal.
They're
And that-
begging for Biden to
Oh,
get
of course
elected.
they are, because they know they'll go back to those policies that allowed this stalemate for
Yeah,
70
well,
years.
they'll say, send us another $100 billion
Yeah.
and we'll consider.
Yeah, it's crazy, and now there's 5 other nations lined up to get in on these deals, and he's
Yeah.
been legitimately nominated for 4 peace prizes, right? Nobel Peace Prizes, not because they thought it was a good look,
Yeah.
like Barack Obama, who was surprised that he got nominated himself. He was like,
Well, he
"Who,
hadn't
me?
done anything.
Well, what did I do?" Yeah.
He hasn't done anything.
No. Trump calls it, we spend our, blood in the sand and our treasure, and it's just not fair. And he's done
It's
a great
everything.
job.
It's that. It's NATO.
Yeah.
It's a million different things that he
400.
has
Yeah.
done. That he's looked at these deals, and
He's
he's
looked at
just-
these deals.
He just said these don't make any sense
Yeah.
for us to be involved in. We are the most generous, most altruistic country ever on the face of the earth, the United States of America. That is just the truth,
Yeah.
and that can be proven in 100 different ways. That is just the truth that we're the most benevolent country ever
Yeah.
in the history of the United States. But we can't constantly, for decades, be taken advantage of.
Right.
We can't. So these deals, they have to make sense, and that's what Donald Trump is saying. He's still saying we're probably going to give more than we receive in a lot of these deals,
Yeah.
but it can't be so lopsided
Right.
that we give and give and give and get nothing
Yeah.
from these deals.
Well, even if you look at the moving of the embassy, right, in Israel, they were talking about $20 million to build an embassy, and he had a real
it was
estate
200
buddy.
million.
Was it 200 million?
It was 200
Yeah, 200. Yeah, 200 million.
Yeah.
To buy and build this thing, which would have taken, if it ever did get done, it would have
And he
taken
did it
20
for like,
years.
He did it for like
Yes.
$275,000 or something.
Well, even
Crazy. It's
he
like-
tells a real
right.
estate buddy, "Go look
It's like he was
around."
buying a house
Yeah.
in Chicopee.
Yeah,
He found a place.
Yeah, he found a place in beautiful marble, the whole bit. It's
Right.
gorgeous, and
And he'll
it,
rent out the back part, it'll be self-sufficient.
yeah, exactly. That's tenants upstairs. The first floor are just shop fronts.
Right, we'll rent it out as the British embassy in the back, get rent from them, it'll cover the whole.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
talked about this for years, that we need somebody who looks at government like a business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We finally get him, and now he said, well, we gotta get him out of there. What do you mean? I think he's doing
Yeah.
a great job.
But the larger issue, we can get into these, granular issues. The larger issue is that using the economic might
Yeah.
of the United States as a quasi weapon. I don't know if I love that word, weaponizing the might. It seems to be
Yeah.
overused. But I understand what people mean when they say that. I just think that it's the best course of action for us to take. How many of these wars, these endless wars, do we want to fight?
Right.
And not only hasn't he started a war, he's getting us out of these
Yeah.
wars. He's
Yes.
extricating.
and he's bringing
us-
bodies home
bringing,
alive.
Bringing bodies home, right?
Alive.
And as long as we have a huge military, it's the walk softly and carry a big stick.
The Teddy
Right.
Roosevelt philosophy.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
As long as we have a huge military might that can back up a threat that says if we need to return, this is not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't want to have to return.
Yeah.
But if we do, it's not going to be pretty for you.
And he's also made
Yeah.
it that if we return,
It's the
we're
way
not,
to keep the world safe.
Yeah, and we're
This
not
is the
returning
way
with
to
bodies.
peace.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in Afghanistan now for over 20 years.
I know.
Yeah,
And the thing is, what are we doing here? We're trying to help the people. People are going to help themselves. They're going to start to protect themselves from the Taliban. We walk away, the Taliban takes over, well, then there's something wrong with the people there. You got to fight back.
and we've
And-
given
and-
them the
and
technology.
if they bring in another bunch of terrorists and they spawn them there like they did the last time with Osama bin Laden, we hit them.
If they become a threat to us,
Yeah.
I think we hit them. I think that I think Americans too. I think a lot of Americans, at least people who I speak to, I think that they're old enough to realize, and they've seen enough of this nonsense, especially in the Middle East, that
Right.
they begin to realize that some of these countries are not candidates for democracy.
Right.
They just aren't.
No.
They like dictatorships. They like the way that their corrupt governments run.
Yeah.
And we have tried. We can't change the entire world. We can change the areas who want to come along with us. We're happy to do that. But for some of these areas, if we have spent 20 years in areas, and sometimes even more than that, Harry, I mean, sometimes it's been 50 years, especially in the Middle East, at least.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I just think it
Almost
makes,
50 years.
I think it makes sense to just get out of them. And also the other big thing about Trump is this oil independence that we have. How we're now the largest oil producer in the world.
And that's changed the entire geopolitical landscape.
It
as
changes
well.
everything.
We got a
We gotta
phone
take
call.
we gotta take it
Sure.
quick. because-
We didn't even roll the number. Yeah. But,
Go ahead, Carl, you're on.
Hey guys, how you doing?
All right.
Hey, great show tonight.
Thank you.
What I just want to comment on, and I know Harry can relate to it, that Eisenhower's greatest last speech is beware of the military-industrial
Oh,
complex.
absolutely.
And you got it, Harry?
Yeah.
Okay. And now, a lot of people feel that, you look at Nixon, he ended the Vietnam War. The military-industrial complex was upset. There's some thoughts that Trump wanted Trump to go into Syria. The military-industrial complex is upset. There's a lot of people that say that General Douglas MacArthur spoke with President Kennedy in October of 1963 and basically convinced him to stop the Vietnam War. And so, I mean, you don't know what's going on out there with like you guys are saying about how Trump has stopped us getting into these conflicts. And if you remember, the Democratic Senator Schumer said if you get the intelligence agencies upset with you, and they have many ways to get back at you. I mean, look at everything that's been going on. I mean, Trump's been under fire since he came down the stairs at Trump Tower and announced his position that he was running for president. So, I mean, some people say there isn't a deep state, but a lot of people say there is a deep state. So, I mean, these are things that we all have to take in consideration. And I know the time is short, and I'll let you guys comment. But I just want to say, excellent show, great show, Harry. And thanks an awful lot. And I really appreciate what you guys are saying. And hopefully some people out there can digest what you're saying. And stay safe and stay well.
thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great call.
Great call.
Yeah. He's right about it.
Well-
If you manufacture bombs, you want the government to use them so they can buy more.
But even deeper than I think what he's saying is, and I've said this all along, I've always thought Donald Trump was in a lot of danger because he was not the typical
Right.
presidential candidate or president, and he's not playing ball in the old Washington ways. And a lot of that has to do with not starting these wars that make people multi-billionaires. He's not doing that. He's bringing them home.
What they found is he's a lot tougher than they thought he would be.
He is a lot tougher than he thought, but he
How
also...
many people
Smarter.
could take the abuse that he takes on a daily basis?
Yeah, you know what, when it comes to that, I gotta say, thank goodness he has the ego he has, that it just rolls off him. Because for most of us, we would be curled up in bed if we had to take that onslaught day after day, we wouldn't get out of bed. But this guy, I think he thrives on it. He drives you. And look at when he gets up there in front of these rallies with 30,000 people, opposed to Biden with 22 people in circles on the thing. He feeds off that energy.
Hey,
When
we
you
gotta
think
go.
about
When you think about what they call,
We're out of
what's
time.
that?
Right
We gotta
there.
go.
Oh,
We're
Yeah,
down to the
sorry.
wire.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, gentlemen. We're gonna do this
Thank you,
again. We'll
Harry.
have you come back.
I'd love to.
yeah.
Regardless of who wins the election, we'll have you back and we'll talk some more about this. This was great. And I know my callers loved it, my audience.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Harry.
Okay. We'll see you next week. We're gonna have the special with the seniors with Kelly.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.